Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Speaking Nerds channel. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today. I'm your lovely host, Maya.
And I'm John. This is the place where we don't just teach you textbook English. We dive deep into the real stuff, the idioms, the culture, the nuance, and the way people actually speak when they aren't reading from a script.
Exactly. If you love learning English that connects you to the world, please support us by hitting that like button and subscribing to English Speaking Nerds right now. It helps us keep the lights on and the coffee brewing, which, as you'll find out in a minute, is very important to John, especially when he's discussing his homeland's coffee culture.
It is critical. It is the fuel of my existence. And nothing sparks patriotic pride like discussing your nation over a good cup of joe. So please, subscribe. It makes a massive difference to us.
Today, we are tackling a topic that literally every single person on this planet experiences. But we're going to look at it through a more sophisticated lens. We aren't just saying, I'm from Brazil. We are talking about your country.
Talking about your country. I love that phrase. It implies identity, heritage, pride, but also a bit of vulnerability mixed with complex emotions. We're going to talk about national identity, cultural traditions, the challenges countries face, what makes you patriotic, the stereotypes you navigate, and how discussing your homeland affects your sense of belonging.
And stick around until the end, because we're going to touch on something really emotional that I think a lot of English learners feel. The complexity of representing your country abroad, and how being an ambassador for your culture can be both empowering and exhausting. It's going to be an introspective one today.
So, let's dive in. Maya, set the scene. You're traveling abroad and someone asks, where are you from? What is the emotional state?
Oh, wow. Okay, so if we're being honest, it's usually a mix of pride and anticipation. I think the word here is pride. When that question hits, my first instinct is to light up and start painting a picture of my homeland.
Pride is the foundation of cultural connection, Maya. But I feel a complexity there too. There is that moment of representation, that's a great word for our audience, representation, where you suddenly become the voice of millions. You aren't just yourself anymore, you're culturally representing an entire nation with all its beauty and complications.
Representation is the perfect word, and I think for a lot of us, the first spark of discussing our country starts right there. I reach for familiar landmarks in my mind. We call it cultural storytelling.
Ooh, that's a very evocative term. Explain cultural storytelling for everyone.
So, cultural storytelling is when you selectively share aspects of your heritage, traditions, and national narrative to create connection or understanding. You carefully curate which stories to tell, often highlighting positive aspects while navigating more sensitive topics. It's a powerful way to build bridges, but it can feel like you're oversimplifying a complex reality.
I think that's a recipe for connection. My approach is a bit different. I try to be authentic from the start. I have this concept of unfiltered patriotism, like showing both the gems and the rough edges. I need to be honest about what defines my nation.
We need to talk about national identity for a second, because it's such a huge part of human experience. You don't just come from a place, you carry it within you.
It's a fundamental part of who we are. If you speak to me when I'm disconnected from my roots, you'll find me searching. But Maya, you mentioned homeland connection the other day. What does that mean in the context of talking about your country?
Yeah, so this is a bit more of a psychological term. Homeland connection means the emotional and cultural bond you maintain with your place of origin, even when physically distant. Instead of just claiming nationality, you actively preserve traditions, follow news from home, or maintain relationships. It sounds a bit sentimental, but it helps maintain your sense of identity regardless of where you live.
I like that. It's about roots, staying grounded. Because once you start discussing your country, especially abroad, you realize how much of your worldview was shaped by geography. Which brings us to the next phase, the cultural fabric.
The cultural fabric. It's such a rich metaphor. For our learners, describing your country's culture involves explaining customs, societal values, artistic traditions, and the collective character. But it's more than just facts. It's about conveying the soul of a nation.
It is. I start with foundational elements, or cultural pillars, like cuisine, language diversity, or music. And during conversations, authentic details can be scarce. That's a great idiom, scarce as hen's teeth. It means something is very rare, like finding someone who truly understands your nation's nuances without stereotypes.
That sounds challenging. I prefer painting with broad strokes first, then adding details. But I use my observation time to study how others perceive my country. Reading international news or watching documentaries, I try to turn my awareness into a cultural bridge building exercise.
See, that's very intentional of you. I usually just share spontaneously. To share spontaneously means to express thoughts without heavy filtering or preparation. I dive into stories about festivals, family traditions, and I transport people into my culture. It's my way of creating connection before they visit.
And that connection is necessary, because once you declare your nationality or discuss your origins if someone asks, the dynamic changes. You switch into ambassador mode.
Let's talk about that declaration moment. You state your country, you share your accent. What is the first feeling you get?
I feel exposed, and usually my national pride strengthens. We use the phrase national pride as this deep satisfaction in your country's achievements, identity, and heritage. I never have modest national pride. I usually have national pride infinity.
That gives me inspiration just hearing it. I like to focus on specifics. We call this highlighting uniqueness. To highlight uniqueness is actually a communication strategy to emphasize distinctive features, but in national discussions, we use it to mean showcasing what makes your country special, what distinguishes your homeland, what makes it irreplaceable.
What makes it irreplaceable? I love that phrasing. It feels purposeful, doesn't it? Like your country is contributing something essential to humanity. And this is where we get into sharing heritage. You have to involve personal experiences.
Personal experiences, family stories, the memories that make your connection authentic.
It's true. And there is a specific type of language we use when talking about countries. It's called cultural vocabulary. You can't just say, nice place. You have to say, my country boasts breathtaking landscapes, or we're renowned for our hospitality.
Cultural vocabulary is the currency of meaningful conversation. It elevates everything, but it can be mentally taxing. Taxing means it demands significant mental effort, especially if you're explaining complex history. I find myself getting caught in deep discussions at gatherings, explaining political contexts.
The legendary dinner table geography lessons. Even if you're just having casual drinks, the concept exists. It's that informal sharing of cultural insights or national perspectives that happens in social settings. But John, what about misconceptions? That's a huge part of the country discussion.
Oh, misconceptions. The bane of my national pride. The bane of my existence means the thing that causes the most frustration. So many conversations could just be appreciative exchanges, but stereotypes hit.
Absolutely. We often hear reductive statements when discussing countries. Phrases like, isn't everyone there poor? Or, do you all live like that movie? Or, I heard your government is corrupt.
Let's break down how to handle these for the nerds watching. First, stay composed. Stay composed means to remain calm and collected despite provocation. Second, educate gently. Educate gently means to correct misunderstandings without being condescending. And third, redirect to nuance means to steer conversation toward the complex reality rather than stereotypes.
They sound so diplomatic, but sometimes they just feel exhausting. I think the hardest part of discussing your country, though, isn't the initial pride. It's what happens when criticism emerges.
Ah, yes. But first, the passion itself. Do you experience the national awakening?
The national awakening, yes. This is a psychological phenomenon where you suddenly feel intense connection to your homeland, especially when abroad or when criticized. It's energizing for the spirit, but not always rational.
It is. I try to make a point of capturing those moments, getting some perspective. It acts as an identity refresher for the soul. But then you face reality, and the complex emotions hit when discussing challenges.
The dissonance.
It hits you like a paradox. Your love is strong, your awareness of problems is real. The blind patriotism has faded. How do you handle the dissonance, Maya?
It's a balance. We call it critical patriotism. To practice critical patriotism means to love your country while acknowledging its flaws honestly. I usually pause, maybe gather my thoughts, or I switch approach. I stop doing the romanticized version, the idealized picture, and I discuss the authentic reality stuff, honest challenges, systemic issues, things that require acknowledging complexity.
That's mature. I usually seek to inspire change, which is a good instinct, I know. But this brings up a good point about modern national discourse, the pressure to defend constantly.
This is the sophisticated part of the conversation I wanted to get to. We live in a comparative culture.
Comparative culture. Define that for us.
Comparative culture is the tendency to constantly rank, judge, and measure countries against each other, creating competitions where there should be appreciation. If your country isn't the best at something, some people see it as failure, and it leads to something very dangerous called defensive patriotism.
Defensive patriotism is a serious topic. It's not just pride, it's the reflexive need to justify or protect your country's reputation, even when criticism is valid. It's when you feel like acknowledging problems betrays your homeland, which creates internal conflict.
And I think a lot of our audience who are learning English while also navigating cultural identity might feel this. You feel like you have to be the perfect representative. You explain, defend, justify, translate nuances. It's overwhelming.
It is, and in national discourses, this manifests as cultural fatigue. Have you ever felt that?
Oh, constantly. Cultural fatigue is the exhaustion from repeatedly explaining, defending, or educating others about your country's culture, especially facing the same stereotypes or questions. Even proud citizens feel this.
Especially when communicating in a second language. Imagine the pressure our viewers feel. They're representing their nations, but also navigating linguistic barriers. That is a double challenge.
Exactly. So if you are listening to this and you feel tired of being a cultural ambassador or like your country is misunderstood, give yourself some grace. Give yourself grace means be kind to yourself. You are representing something profoundly complex.
Well said, Maya. And that brings us to the heart of national identity, the historical weight. Let's say you've shared cultural highlights. It's time to address the past.
To address the past means to acknowledge and discuss historical events, including difficult ones. I have a practice where I read historical accounts from multiple perspectives. It feels necessary. I am honoring complexity and avoiding whitewashing.
I like that. I physically prepare myself mentally. What does the world need to understand? To myself. But then comes the evolution. And this is where the historical consciousness gets tricky, because technically you're proud, but are you accountable for history?
That's the hard part. We carry collective memory with us. There's a term called generational responsibility. It's like when you inherit both achievements and wrongs. We need to acknowledge our country's full history.
And how do you balance that?
Historical awareness helps me. It's sobering. I'm celebrating culture while recognizing colonialism, wars, or injustices. It gets me out of blind nationalism and into informed citizenship. What about you?
I wish I could say I do deep historical study, but honestly, I usually engage in what's called selective memory.
Oh, this is such a fascinating psychological concept. Please explain it.
Okay, so selective memory in national contexts is when you unconsciously emphasize positive aspects of your country's history while minimizing or ignoring uncomfortable truths, not from malice, but because it's emotionally easier. It's your way of maintaining pride without confronting painful complexity.
That is so powerful and so human. It's like history owns my past, but pride owns my present. But then, of course, you learn more and the cycle continues.
Exactly. It's an uncomfortable cycle. An uncomfortable cycle is a situation where facing one truth leads to another question, creating continuous moral reflection.
Breaking that cycle requires courage, which I'm developing. But realizing that national identity evolves is a huge step.
Countries are not static, they're living entities. That's a perspective I try to embrace.
I love that. So we've covered the prideful beginning, the cultural storytelling, the stereotypes, the comparative culture, and the historical complexity. It's a lot.
It is a lot, but I think talking about it helps, and learning the vocabulary for it helps. Because if you can articulate your national identity, if you can say, I practice critical patriotism, or I'm experiencing cultural fatigue, you can communicate better.
Absolutely. Language gives us power over our identity expression.
Before we continue, Maya, I want to ask you a question that we can also pose to our audience.
Go for it.
If you could change one thing about how people perceive your country, just snap your fingers and shift global understanding, what would it be?
Oh, that's profound. I would want people to see the diversity within my country, not just one image, but the complexity, the different voices, perspectives, regions. The stereotypes, I'd erase them. What about you?
I would eliminate the reductive narratives. People judge based on headlines. If I could teleport understanding from lived experience to global consciousness, I would feel my country was truly seen.
Instant understanding would bridge so many divides.
Now, we want to hear from you, the English-speaking nerds community. We have a challenge for you today in the comments.
Yes, we want you to practice this sophisticated vocabulary. We don't just want to know where you're from. We want to know what is the most challenging part of discussing your country. Is it the stereotypes? Is it the historical complexity? Is it the defensive patriotism?
Or tell us about your cultural storytelling approach. What aspects do you highlight? What do you struggle to explain? Be honest, we won't judge you.
In fact, being vulnerable in a second language is a huge sign of fluency, so take a risk. Write a paragraph about your country. Use words like national pride, cultural fatigue, critical patriotism, or homeland connection.
We read every single comment. It's actually the highlight of my morning routine right after the coffee. Seeing your stories from Brazil, from Japan, from Italy, from everywhere, it reminds us why we do this.
It really does. You guys are the reason we are here. You are part of this team.
And hey, if you're feeling that cultural fatigue we talked about, remember that being a cultural bridge is noble work. You don't have to explain everything perfectly. You just have to share authentically.
That is beautiful advice, John. Just keep sharing. That's how understanding grows.
Well, I think that's all the wisdom we have for today. My thoughts are contemplating landscapes, which means it's time for my cultural reflection.
And it's time for me to research more about global perspectives. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation and learned some new words, please give us a thumbs up.
And share this video with someone from another country. Maybe someone you met while traveling. It might spark their next conversation.
Or just a friend who struggles to explain their homeland. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next deep dive.
Until next time, stay nerdy, stay curious, and celebrate your roots.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
You know, John, even though we said goodbye, I feel like we touched on something regarding cultural diplomacy earlier that we should expand on for the advanced learners. We're still recording, right?
Yeah, the light is still on. Let's keep going. This is the director's cut for the true nerds who stuck around. You mean about representing countries in professional settings?
Yeah, we talked about casual conversations, but we didn't talk about the soft power concept.
Oh, political science time. I love this. Okay, explain soft power in the context of talking about your country.
So, soft power is a nation's ability to influence others through attraction and persuasion rather than coercion. When you discuss your country positively, your personal stories become ambassadorial, creating goodwill even in simple conversations.
It's impactful. That's why our stories matter. We are building bridges. That's a common metaphor. It usually refers to diplomacy, but here it refers to the personal connections that transcend borders through shared understanding.
Exactly, and this enhances our cross-cultural competence. This is a concept by intercultural experts. Cross-cultural competence is the ability to navigate, respect, and communicate across different cultural contexts effectively for mutual understanding.
And in modern globalization, cross-cultural competence is almost essential. We are constantly in a state of cultural exchange. We share traditions a little bit, but receive global perspectives in return.
Cultural exchange. That is complex, but it is so accurate. It's why you leave conversations feeling enriched, even when discussing difficult topics. Your mind was processing thousands of cultural nuances.
Processing requires effort. Every time you switch from pride to critique to context to shared humanity, there is an emotional cost. You invest vulnerability. It's like sharing a soul map. Keep it authentic.
That is such a good analogy. So, for our English learners who are discussing countries, if you are sharing without reflecting on complexity, you aren't really connecting deeply.
Busted. I feel like we just called out half our audience. But it's true. If you want to learn this vocabulary, if you want to remember soft power, you need to apply it thoughtfully.
One thing that helps me, and maybe this is a tip for discussions, is aspect focusing.
Explain that one.
Aspect focusing is where you divide your country into aspects. So, from culture to politics to environment, I focus intentionally. For history, I explore timelines. You group similar topics together logically.
That's clear. I try to do that with the layered approach. Have you heard of that?
Yes, the communication strategy.
Exactly. You present surface level first, basic facts, then gradually reveal complexity for authentic understanding. It's great for avoiding overwhelming listeners because you tell yourself, I'll start simple. Anyone can grasp simple.
It makes the cultural maze look like a clear narrative.
Make a mountain out of a molehill. Wait, that's backwards here. Actually, we're doing the opposite. We're taking a mountain, complex national identity, and making it accessible.
You know, speaking of complexity, we didn't talk much about the diaspora experience.
Oh, the diaspora experience. That is a profound phenomenon. Diaspora refers to communities living outside their ancestral homeland.
It's that unique position of being culturally rooted in one place while physically living in another. You can't ignore the present because you are living abroad, but you're preserving what about home?
It's powerful. It's the anticipation of connection. I think the only navigation for diaspora living is to have fluid identity. If you can embrace both worlds, it's less isolating.
Or just have a really good community. Connect with fellow nationals, share cultural practices.
There you go, always bringing it back to connection. You know, Maya, thinking about our audience, they are global learners. They are in time zones all over the world. When we are discussing our homelands, someone in Tokyo is preserving traditions, someone in Brazil is explaining carnival.
It's amazing to think about. We are all connected by this identity. And even though our cultures are different, these experiences, the proud moments, the misunderstood aspects, the desire for representation, they're universal.
Universal. That's the key. We are all human beings trying to honor where we come from.
I have a question for you, John. A bit of a curveball.
Uh-oh, I'm ready.
If you didn't have limitations, if geography was no barrier, how would you share your country with the world? Would you still have conversations?
If I had no constraints, oh man, I would probably create immersive cultural experiences, letting people feel traditions daily. No barriers to understanding. That is the ultimate goal.
No barriers. That sounds like global harmony.
Then I would facilitate exchanges somewhere. I would host dialogues, maybe ancient storytelling or modern perspectives, and I would listen. I think I would still discuss, but reciprocally. I wouldn't have misunderstandings.
I think that's the ideal. It's not about perfection. Nations need authenticity. It's about mutual respect.
Mutual respect, the foundation of intercultural dialogue. That is what we're all seeking.
What about the audience? I wonder what their ideal cultural exchange is.
That's a great prompt. In the comments, tell us, if barriers didn't exist, how would you share your country with others? Would you focus on food? Would you teach language? Would you share history?
I bet a lot of people would say cultural immersion.
And speaking of immersion, that connects to heritage preservation efforts. We should define that too.
Oh, yes. Heritage preservation is actively protecting and transmitting your cultural traditions, language, and customs to future generations. They might document family recipes in Vietnam or teach folk dances in Poland.
It sounds vital. Vital means essential and life-giving, but I've heard it can be deeply rewarding.
And the impact is lasting. Can you imagine maintaining culture across generations? Can you teach me? You're inspiring.
You're preserving our roots. That is the gratitude of the heritage keeper. Connected.
Connected. That is the word of our discussion. If I had $1 for every time I felt connected through cultural sharing, I'd fund international exchanges.
Serious question, though. Do you think national borders matter as much in our interconnected world? Or are we all becoming global citizens?
I think the glocal identity model is emerging. Glocal means balancing global awareness with local roots. Maybe embrace international perspectives, but nurture cultural heritage. You get the worldview, the openness, the empathy, but you also sustain your identity meaningfully.
Sustaining while globalizing is the biggest achievement of modern identity, let's be honest. Harmonizing your soul with humanity.
It really is. It expands your perspective, because otherwise, narrow nationalism is just cultural isolation.
Cultural isolation. Rejecting diversity, fearing difference. It's not a celebration, it's just limiting growth.
You are very wise today, John.
I'm just a global citizen, Maya. I'm speaking for the learners, the people who want their cultures understood.
I appreciate your depth, and I think the audience does too. You know, listening to us discuss like this, I hope the audience realizes that this is what fluency sounds like. It's not just vocabulary, it's the flow, the way we explore ideas, the way we care.
The way we move from pride to critique to hope, that is natural conversation. It's authentic.
It is authentic, and that's okay. If you are learning English, don't try to be a textbook. Don't try to speak without emotion. Try to speak from the heart.
Speak from the heart. I like that. Connect with your truth, not just the grammar.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, another great idiom, at the end of the day, meaning ultimately, language is about expressing identity and building understanding.
Okay, I think we have definitely stayed longer than planned now. We have been talking extensively.
But it was a meaningful talk. I feel culturally enriched.
Me too. It was enlightening.
All right, for real this time. Thank you for hanging out with us, you wonderful nerds.
Go share your country's story, or if it's nighttime, dream of your homeland fondly.
Dreaming fondly creates connection. Trust us.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.